But
That's one of those.
get
like,
$80,000.
that's a different plan for me.
I think so, maybe. Yeah.
Right, that's what
I'm
I'm saying,
involved
probably
in
not enough to go around.
So yeah,
That's what-
sometimes if you have
So I will
seven
stay,
on the road.
stay where I.
One up
Alright.
Coffee Creek.
Yeah, plenty of busy and connected.
So,
Yeah.
I took my mom to over of the steak things last night. She goes, I can just eat there every day.
I
I
should
don't
have
know
gone tonight.
how much.
That was fun. I liked your
Wow. It's just a man operation and a one guy operation.
I feel bad.
I didn't know that. I didn't know they were there.
And he would do
Get up.
rapid
So-
fire.
I saw you come in and like, go to a table and then I went back to my meeting and I looked and you were gone.
Yeah, they called me over.
Compliment that I
It was pretty funny.
all you.
And I don't know if anybody on the state list about.
So you got a nice shot
Hmm.
camera. Yeah. Sometimes there's a need for it. Yeah.
Who got a new camera?
We came close to losing.
Morris Cohen.
He got a new camera?
Oh,
I can taste pictures.
Yeah.
And it's a talk.
Joe, this is like we're-
Hang on to his feet.
YouTube is watching.
And we hired them out. And we
Yeah.
hired.
Right.
Good evening. Welcome to study session on November 14th, 2023. Donna, would you do a roll call, please?
It will. Councilmember Bode,
Here.
Councilmember Sherman.
Here.
Councilmember Gutierrez,
Here.
Mayor Nesco,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schmidt, Councilmember McDowell,
Here,
and Councilmember Peterson.
here.
Thank you, Donna.
Welcome.
Public Works Director Jay Harris has information for us about the Transportation Impact Fee Program.
Good evening, I'm Mayor Jay Harris, your Public Works Director. A few weeks ago at study session, I gave a presentation. There was some questions about traffic impact fees. And really going back to what are they, what do they do, how do we charge them, those sort of questions were coming up. So I wanted to take a step back for a moment and go over some of these items. So next slide, please. So traffic impact fees are one-time charge assessed by the local government against a new development. And it pays for expanded or new capital facilities that addresses increased demand for services by the development. And so under the Growth Management Act, we can collect traffic impact fees. We have to have an ordinance. Obviously, we adopted an ordinance for that. And public streets and roads are sort of the highlighted thing there. There's other things you can collect impact fees for. Schools, for example, they have a pretty low one here. Shelton School does. My understanding, we don't have anything for parks today. We don't have an impact fee for parks. It's something council can consider. We do have a transportation impact fees for road zone. Pretty much traffic impact fees take the cost for new transportation facilities they charge the development for those rather than charge like the general fund or the general public in ways. So the new development and the growth of the new development is paying for the expanded roadway improvements needed for that development. The next slide.
Also, tenant improvements would be you'd be charging traffic impact fees for a tenant improvement if they were adding space to their,
Potentially, yeah, absolutely, yeah,
So,
that's part of.
is that in here?
That's,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, because it's a.
Okay, so here's some key principles, okay? It can only be used for capital facilities, so a road facility, and can be used for operations and maintenance. That's big, so that's first step, right? And that it can correct existing deficiencies in your system, but it can be used to expand facilities. So a lot of times if you have severe deficiencies, like huge transportation backup, like the TBD funds or a state grant or other things are gonna have to go in with traffic impact fees. The traffic impact fees for the new development and for the capacity. So if you have an existing deficiency, I can't go and use traffic impact fees to solve that existing deficiency. This comes all out of state code, right? And I can't use 100% of traffic impact fees for a project. right? So even though it might make sense where I gotta buy land, I gotta build a roundabout, it doesn't exist today. And it's all 100% new traffic, because it doesn't exist today, there's no road there, let's say. The state says I can't use 100%, so I gotta put $1 in it for somewhere else, or whatever. Usually we do a proportional thing, so we're updating the existing facility, there's existing deficiencies. We use TBD or grant funds, and then we supplement the project, and I'll get to that in a minute, of some of the ones we've done, with traffic impact fees. So, TIP credits can be given to developments to build identified capital capacity projects. We're having conversations with developers, okay? We have, people like Olympic Heights, for example, at the college, that intersection has some backup, right around school time, right? And so there's issues there with them trying to get their traffic out, they sort of hit a little log jam right there. So there's potential to, take, traffic impact fees that they would pay, and, that they go build project of whatever is identified. And then, when they pick up their building permit, we waive some of those traffic impact fees that they would have paid. And the good thing about that is, if it's an identified improvement, it needs to be in our capital plan, our comprehensive plan. That we're using private dollars and private engineering to build and construct things, for the future for the city. Typically, they add more capacity than what their need would be to. We pay them for additional capacity for others to use in the future. So we don't have to pay prevailing wage because it's private contracting work, right? So there's a lot of benefits to the city. In the city, I'm loaded with projects right now, right? I mean, we have a lot going on for the small staff I have. So it does take the weight off of some of the things we need to do and puts it on private developers. So this is the new one as of July, the second bullet point from the bottom, that they can be used for bicycle and ped facilities. You got to connect 2 or more destinations, which I thought was odd that RCW got that. But obviously you got to go from here to there. But that was in there. But that's a new one that they put in there, and that can make a difference in the future. So we're working on our transportation component of our plan next year, and so we have the transportation plan, which is the car part of it, and then we'll have the multimodal sidewalk and that part of the plan also. We're going to identify projects. The Simpson Trail could be one of them, that potentially could use traffic impact fees to fund a piece of that project, right? So they'll be good in the future to maybe use for some more pedestrian type of projects around the community, especially to start connecting things up a little more, right?
Why can't you use 100% of the cost of the project?
Yeah, RCW fixed that for us. I didn't, and so I'd have to go back and look at the legislative notes, but I think they're just saying that you never do a full capacity improvement. And I brought up that one where there's no road existing, and I got to build a signal and a new road. Nobody's there today. RCW says that you can't bill it 100% towards new development or impact fees. So it's this provision that they have. I think they once onus of city dollars in projects, whether it's gas tax funds or TBD, or maybe a grant where we use TIF funds and go secure a grant for some things. They just want to see a mix of money.
Want to see the city a little more responsible instead of.
And we should plan projects and have some buy-in on them.
Okay.
Well, and not just the people living in that development are going to use that road or that roundabout, right? So that makes sense.
It should pick up some existing deficiencies somewhere else.
Yeah, and I can see where I can kind of understand maybe where the language, why the language is specific like that, because then you can run into the problem where the development's paying for a specific improvement.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. I just remember when school bond passed and we were hearing about their TIF at the high school. And it was, you guys are gonna make us build a roundabout. It's like, no, that it's the impact to the system. But you keep saying traffic, transportation.
It's
Not
transportation.
just traffic.
So what I'm stuck on,
I hear you.
unfortunately, is Oregon.
Yeah.
These traffic impact fees, and then unfortunately, in our municipal code, we call it traffic impact fees too.
We do.
So I was programmed, but in the new
Yeah.
ordinance I'll be bringing you, I'm going to transportation.
Yeah.
I gotta change this my wording.
All this.
That's right.
But it is traffic.
Rewire, okay?
But it's more.
It's always one.
It's more of the time.
I did that,
wrote
I consider bike.
yeah, in a meeting I had with Marlos.
buses traffic.
Okay, so then there also can be some fee reductions or waivers, okay? So, if you find that the impact caused by the development doesn't place a burden on the system. Okay, so there's findings that this particular use doesn't have any more traffic, right? And so, those are a little hard to determine, right? I guess example could be maybe a helipad, right, where you're going up and down, right, you don't use, but then you can make a finding, well, people leaving need to pull their car in there, right? To maybe leave that helipad, so things like that, but there are instances of people that might not pay an impact fee for a type of development or type of use. That'd be very rare.
Most likely reduction, right, rather than complete waiver.
It's very hard to find, so it's a use that does not generate any traffic. So, there's also RCW allows, impact, waivers or accurate reduction for low income housing, early learning facilities, or developments with broad public purpose. And then those items, if you waive a piece of that fee, somebody else has to make it up. Okay, so the city general fund or a grant or whatever, you still need to have whatever the fee charged, the fund still needs to go, you know, the traffic impact fees whole. You can waive it, but another fund at the city, like the general fund, would need to contribute whatever the proportional cost was. So I guess like this, if you had a reduction for low income, for example, you might have some low income sales tax or some traffic or some revenue source that help offset some of those traffic impact fees. So,
That's a huge point.
yes.
Yeah, offsetting that from someplace
Right,
else.
and I didn't make this is right in RCW, okay, so next slide.
I have a question that might, I don't know if we're in the right area or if we're ever gonna be in the area. So they're in the urban growth. And they're building a house, there's no road, there's no traffic impact fee, obviously, because it's the urban growth, and then we annex into the city, then. Nothing,
We accept the current conditions essentially. Yes.
so
Oh, go ahead, are you done? with
We.
it?
No, I'm
city
just-
accepts conditions.
it's rolling in my head, go ahead.
So my question, for the low income housing, early learning, facilities developments. Okay, so maybe it's built for that, and then later down the road, it changes use, what happened?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a
Okay.
few minutes.
So-
Good question. And going back
So,
here,
yeah, so I stole my head, so I'm going back. So we annex this area, there's no road, then we're required to put it in at the taxpayers' dollars.
it's correct, still getting behind.
Or it's substandard road.
Or it's a
Maybe it's a
substandard
gravel-
road.
Maybe it's a gravel road, I don't know, divided to 5, 6, 7 houses, something like
Yeah.
that, so it's a substandard road the city then inherits. And then now that's added to our CIP later down the road for improvements.
So when a bunch of people develop in the county on septics or whatever within our UGA, we're not charging traffic impact fees. We charge for sewer connection charge later and a water connection charge, and they would pay general facility charges. But the building's already built, right? So we don't charge a traffic impact fee. The county doesn't have a traffic impact fee either.
Mm.
So one of the things we're
In Belfair?
Oh, in Belfair, they don't hear in our UGA. One of the things we're talking about, we're going through this big planning effort with them at the same time, we're doing it as a joint venture type of thing. Is that within the UGA, that they apply a traffic impact fee equal to the amount that we would charge, right? And then that money is collected and put into a fund to the identified improvements within the UGA and within the city limits.
More specifically, adopt development standards, city development standards within the UGA as part of the conversation with the comprehensive plan.
Sewer, water, streets,
Yeah,
local roads, streetlights, those sorts of things.
So,
Making progress on that,
it hasn't started yet, really, yeah, but
just in years.
that's a topic.
Years past, it's brought up, it's
Mhm.
Correct. Yeah, well, obviously it'll start on a staff level. There has to be
So
moved through.
a little more on Eric's comment. So you build a house out of the UGA and the roads are dirt and everything, so you leave it. But then they're annexed into the city limits. Is there a charge? No. It would be the future houses or the future businesses.
Yes, if there's an empty lot next to that house is annexed, if they constructed now within the city limits, they would
Okay.
be subject to the city's fees and, you know, and development standards, correct?
All right.
So that's one of the ways to do it. Another way UGA development can happen is you have to annex to the city in the UGA. If you want to develop, and you have to hook to water and sewer, right? That's very common in a lot of other cities. So there's different ways to do that. The problem is with that is you don't get, we have leapfrog development going on all over the place. The development goes linear then, because you have to extend logical services, you know, that are cost effective. So you sort of build your way out of the UGA typically, and people sort of annex as the sewer and water facilities are extended. So that's another model, but you can't go to the far corner of the UGA and put a septic system in, which is allowed now, potentially a well, right, if you can get a permit for one. So, anyways, things are a little different here. So traffic impact fees, so how much was there any final questions on that last slide? No? So how is the tip calculated? So it's a per vehicle trip generated during the peak hours. And it's determined by the use of the property. And then they use trip generation data from the Institute of Traffic Engineers. It's a national type of model. And the rates are adopted each year for inflation. They're in the master fee schedule, which you guys saw at the last meeting. So the traffic impact fee for residential housing is a flat rate per unit, regardless of the size of a home. So if you have 1,000-foot single family or 4,000 square foot single family, the TIF is sort of averaged out for all single family, because most communities have differing types of housing, and the impacts from all of the users for single family equal about the same. But there's another one for commercial fees, and I'll show you those in a minute. And that's per gross floor area. Apartments are number of dwelling units. Gas stations are by the number of vehicle fueling positions. This is what they call it in the ITE. It's the number of pumps, right? And then, anyways, I have the table on the next page, and then these are just some footnotes that we have on the table that sort of guides you what some of the acronyms are and that sort of thing. Anyways, next page.
Jay, is that number, the way that the fueling pumps are placed, does that have a big impact on how the traffic is, how it comes, is that what that is for?
Yes, more pumps, more traffic.
But if you put them, does it matter which way you put the pump, but they,
Typically built so you can always access them, right, when you're designing the station. So there should be an issue there with that. And then also, you might have a lot of pumps, but not sell a lot of gas for various reasons. The mayor probably knows why. Usually it's the price, it's on a sign and people don't like it, they keep driving by. But it could be level service, how the station looks, those sorts of things. So, but the traffic impact fee, it's a national average based on pumps and trip generation, on average, what a station would generate. But like Fred Meyer Fuel, right, probably per pump generates more traffic than, and Hartford probably also is in that same, than a Chevron, you know, right downtown or something that maybe has their core type of station. They typically don't generate as much traffic as some more of the wholesale gas stations, but the fee per pump is a national average, it's all the same.
It's only for, but that'd only be for like a new build.
It would be a new build, or if you wanted to add.
Change of use.
more pumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had an individual several years ago that talked about adding pumps to the station that would have generated additional TIF.
Channel improvement.
Yeah.
Right.
You got it.
Can you remind me, do we have parking minimums for commercial?
Yes, in some sense, yeah.
In some zones?
Yeah, not in the downtown, but CRV, general commercial. have.
Really quick, what's the point of that? Minimums?
Question, sorry,
Okay, no problem.
yeah, it's gonna be addressed. As well, yeah.
Just.
So here is traffic impact fee schedule. You see a single family residential, $4,700 for a heavy duty unit. Okay, multifamily is 2,800, and you go down the residential uses, you can see all those. Some of the commercial services, hotel, per room is an ITE code 310, and they are at 2,700. There's been talk of hotels, right? And some are needed in this area. Nothing is quite came to fruition today, but there's eventually things like that happen, right?
Do you have any idea why it's so high for hotel for a room?
That's the actual trip generation per room, based on, the number of units. So you can see if you go all the way to the top, the basic trip rate is about 1. The single family home is about almost 10 trips per day per house. That's you, your kids, that's the Amazon truck, that's the mail, that's the meter reader. You add all the uses of, and some of them are pass-by trips, right? And some of them are direct trips in and out. But so they take a basic trip of 1, so you can see down at the hotel, they're saying it's about 60% of a residential unit.
Oh, okay.
What seems about right when someone pulls in.
No one visits seniors though, so I mean,
Yep.
senior adult living is like 0.11.
Correct, very low because most people don't drive, right?
So the calculation is the cost of new trip generation, you see it at 46, 5, what is it, 54, 57? And that's multiplied by the trip rate. If you see new trip rate in the second last column to the right, so you'll just multiply. So if it was a 1, it's at 46, 54, 57. Again, if it's whatever, 1.01, 1.01, that's why it's 47, 11. So that's how it's calculated.
Hotel motel in Olympia is $3,802 a per.
Thank you for that.
So any questions about the tip schedule?
This is the first time I've actually seen the impact fee schedule.
And this is also a master fee schedule.
Part of master fee schedule.
Part of the master fee schedule.
Yeah.
It's an attachment.
You get a really good restaurant. I'm really surprised at the amount for a restaurant compared to a hotel room.
Yeah, now, on the restaurants you wanna watch, is it, a sit-down restaurant, or is it a high turnover fast food? We drive through tavern drinking place, that's always a good place to go. Anyways, you can see the different categories, and when you go to the Institute of Traffic Engineers manuals, they have a full page describing exactly what that type of use is, and how they calculated the numbers, and, you know, how they came up with averages.
I'm not sure I'm understanding some of these. So supermarket, 3114. Where does per person, per square foot?
Yeah, it's for 1,000 square feet of gross area or
Okay. Because I'm going over the other side and going, oh wow, $37,000 for a gas station.
So those commercial are based on the square footage.
Okay.
Rather than the.
Flat rate.
so, and on the next page, I got a calculation that shows how you do one of these from that
Okay.
table, next page. So a new restaurant, hey, that's fun. So, you multiply the square footage by the traffic impact fee that's shown on the far right column, that corresponds to whatever it is that you want. So new 1,500 square foot, quality restaurant, we pay a one-time traffic impact fee of the 1,500 square feet by the 2788 shown on the table, and $41,000 traffic impact fee for the new restaurant. So that pays for their new trips they're adding to the system over the life of that restaurant or that structure, right? And so they can always change use, right? So down the road, if the restaurant goes out of business, they could change use. If it's a reduced use, there's no credits back, but if they increase the use from the restaurant, then a charge would, that's higher, a higher trip generation than the commercial restaurant, we would charge an additional fee. So that one-time fee sort of runs with the property or the improvement. So change of use. So we need to look to see if it generates more or less vehicle trips. If it's more trips, we charge a fee. If it's less, you just use the old fee that was previously charged. So the supermarket, so that's a rent to remodel, a 6,000 square foot auto parts store. It's somewhat plausible here. Larger auto parts store with the supermarket wants to go in. So the tip for the supermarket, without the offset, without the auto parts store, to build a brand new one, would be $186,000 for a 6,000 square foot supermarket. And the auto parts store would be $95,000 if they built. Well, you subtract the two, and so the supermarket, because of the increased strip rate, would owe $91,000. These fees are charged by all surrounding cities, right? This isn't anything unusual here. I see some shock on people's faces. These are big numbers, but to be honest with you, our numbers are somewhat tame compared to others. Okay, so anyways, I'm used to where I came from. These numbers were quite a bit higher in a lot of different.
Well, Olympia must not be fussing with them because they've got building and new building and everything going up in Olympia.
Yep.
So the fees, they must just figure that's what it is.
That's what it is, that they use those for capacity projects.
It's a different economy too. though.
Yeah.
I mean, an entry level home there is twice what an entry level home is here. I mean, it's,
Well, I'm thinking of all the condos downtown, you
Yeah.
know.
but just, I mean, it's just a different economy of scale too, though. Like running some of these numbers. I mean, most small restaurants will never be able to open.
They could potentially make their money back over there a little faster than
Yeah.
we can.
Unfortunately, our transportation costs are the same though, too.
Right,
Right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Because per mile lane here is the same cost as Olympia to construct. Yet, these
Yeah.
businesses aren't realizing potentially the same,
Right.
same return on their investment.
And the other thing, these fees were calculated quite some time ago. These are like 2018 fees, and we've increased it a couple times, just a few years of inflation before I got here. There's been some inflation adjustments. But when we get done with the new transportation comp plan, probably a year from now, maybe, something like that, we're gonna have a brand new project list. We're gonna have project evaluations. We're gonna have on there PNP volumes, new trips, existing trips. What's different, divide the total project, come up with that new base tip fee for council to see.
Who's keeping track of these change of uses? Because I could tell you probably on Railroad, we probably had one building with 10 change of uses over the years. I mean,
Well,
as a guess.
When
So
they get a permit.
a change of use, it can go from mercantile to mercantile. If you're, if you're a bookstore to a candy store, it's not gonna be technically. a
Bookstore to a restaurant and then
Bookstore,
restaurant
could be,
to
'cause that's mercantile.
gift shop, restaurant to a gift shop.
So if they're permitting,
Yeah.
so, right, if you apply for a business license.
Yeah.
Or apply for a building permit, then you get notified that there's a change of use application required, and then we review that change of use application, determine what the use will be, when it's calculated appropriately at that time.
And we try to bring those up at pre-submission conference, so I highly recommend anybody doing any tenant improvements or anything, come in and talk to the city and have a conference with us. So you know before you sign a lease or anything, what the fee would be, because you can walk into a former business where there really isn't any fee. Because it was a higher trip generator, or you can buy something that has been vacant for an extended period of time. The TIF code has a 5-year limit on it, so if it's been vacant for 5 years, right? The fee, it goes back, you would, whatever your improvement was, you would have to redo it, that's the current TIF ordinance. Yep. So that's why it's prudent that, and we welcome people to come in and talk to us about each use, each address, right? Because they all vary a little bit, especially on the commercial side. Single family residential is just that flat fee, no matter the size you're building. But it's important to come talk to us. Okay,
So just wanna go start changing restaurant leases downtown, get TIF rich. I'll have $100,000 in equity in each building, just off the fees they won't have to pay.
Are there any land uses that we don't have identified here that exist in the city limits? So essentially, is there anything that is not subject to TIF? Other than the elementary school has NA in there, that should probably have enough.
Okay, what was the number that you told me?
The elementary school does apply,
Well, I know we don't get any TIF from the big mountain.
because it's simply like for like, right? Because
They never took down the old mountain,
they didn't take down the old Mountain View,
and they're
they,
using it for.
they committed to use it
office
for
purposes.
office purposes or storage. Is my understanding.
Okay,
Yeah, and as those change over time without a permit process,
Yeah.
yeah, they very well do.
So where does? What's the number that you told me that they're called, the 50?
501c3s, the nonprofits,
Yeah.
or, no, 502s.
Yeah, where are those in
502
here?
marijuana
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. cannabis person
Where are those in
processing.
here?
So those would probably fall under either warehousing,
Okay,
because they've argued that it depends on the building permit, right? So sometimes it's either a processing unit, so it might fall, excuse me, about what would be. Some of.
So when you go to the actual ITE manual, it says what all the similar uses and to that category is like toy stores.
Some of fallen
They
under
nursery one, but-
warehouse
Right.
sometimes too,
Well,
depending on what they're doing inside the building.
right, well, some of them might be a convenience type store, would that fall maybe?
Yeah,
Convenience
if they're a
market there?
retail
Yeah.
establishment.
I guess
as
they
far
fall
as
under there,
Retailers.
they definitely bring traffic.
where would where like the mill fall?
Industrial.
Yeah, industrial. Fine. Industrial park. That's what I'm kind of saying, like, do we actually identify all of the uses, because.
No.
Yeah, okay.
But there's, like Jay said, the manual has more specific. Definitions to the titles. that are in
These are the most common ones, the IT land use codes, there's some others that aren't shown here, the table will be quite a bit longer without these. So whoever produced this table, it's a little abbreviated. You see longer tables with other cities, but the good news is if it's not on here, you can go to the IT manual, it'll tell you what the trip code is. One thing I didn't explain to you also is, see that new trips column on there? And especially if you go down to commercial services, there's a bypass rate down there, somewhere at 57%, 60% sort of thing. What that means is if I'm going to a daycare center, I'm likely driving by the bank right after that. And then maybe going to the quick move or something, right, to get my car done. So they add those up as a full trip sometimes. Usually it's two different uses or one trip. So that's called the pass by rate. And so the new trip rate was reduced. Each unit you can see has a trip generation, but you reduce it because the trip's already out on the road, doing other errands, stopping by other places. So that's an important concept that the ITE put in their manual some years ago.
They have a video rental store in there.
Yeah.
Really glad that they have that.
Yeah.
Coming back.
Buying stock.
So. This is just within the city limits. If you just go outside the city limits, you don't have to pay these?
Nope.
Now, the county though does have a road fund,
Okay.
right? They offset that with other taxes.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. The general property
And they
tax.
take the costs with the road fund.
Right, I'm just looking at if I'm a developer coming to this area, I wanna open in a business, do I wanna be here or do I wanna be over
Well,
there?
if you
So
have the
it's like-
infrastructure just outside the
Right.
city too. to do
No.
that.
High impact development's not happening in the county, so, you know, again, if you're looking to build new, or redevelop. You know, in dense and higher density and in higher impact areas, it's not. It's feasible.
Why did you say that the county doesn't have traffic impact?
They don't.
They haven't adopted
Fees.
traffic impact fees. They have a general road fund, general property. tax. So the county residents pay their general property tax to support road funds that supports capacity projects in theory.
So essentially, all the county residents are paying for that impact, as opposed to the impact, paying for the impact. And I don't know how people always feel about that. We don't out of our property taxes pay for transportation. So that's why we have. We should, no.
Hey, you guys ready for slide 7? So here's our current adopted, traffic impact fee project list, transportation impact fee project list. You'll get it better. Anyways, so here's a list of the projects. One of the goals here is, these are all capacity projects. We're, going to update this. There's some things that need to be shown on here. We're gonna be working on getting you guys a more current update to the list. Because some of the projects are being completed. Anyways, there's a few others that need to be added, that sort of thing. So staff's gonna be getting you this updated list. It needs to be adopted by ordinance. So when we bring the traffic impact fee ordinance to you, there's changes. I'll go over those in minutes on another slide. We're gonna bring in an updated list to talk about projects also. Any questions about projects?
We have plenty in queue, so no matter
I
how
got a
much money
lot
we
of
generate,
projects.
we're not gonna have too much money.
Water is one of our most important projects,
Right.
right? That we're really concentrating on water. You'll see some street projects still coming out, but we need to make sure that water capacity is online for some growth. That's one of our bigger holdups. So on slide 8, you'll see the traffic impact fee comparison. You can see the red arrow there of where Shelton is. That number is just a little lower because this was 2023. Slide that you saw was adjusted for 2024. That's in your current packet for the next meeting. So North Bend is the high price leader. They got cut off. They're 15,200 something. And then anyways, you go all the way down. So you can see the average is at 5362 down at the bottom there. And then we're below average on the traffic impact fees.
We're in the ballpark, though.
We're almost average.
Do they take into consideration per capita? Or,
But no, these are cities big and small.
Right.
I mean, it's just a list of cities right on here.
just some of the businesses that are gonna come into a smaller town are gonna be different than the businesses that are coming into a bigger town.
That's correct. And then some of the cities that are built out. You know, if you're at a boundary and you can't build anymore, your traffic impact fees can be pretty low or your projects have been done,
Right.
right? So the fee theoretically, if we had a containment and we was always stay within that boundary. Would go down significantly over the years, because once everything was built, you wouldn't need to do that anymore. Shelton is a long ways off from that though, right? But a lot of like Seattle cities and that sort of thing, they're surrounded by other cities, they're built around.
Mhm.
Traffic impact fees plummet significantly at that point.
One thing, to note, it's interesting, Kitsap County, Thurston County are listed on this graph.
I have a question. So let's say, we've got the city and we have the county that wants to build a building. Are they exempt to traffic impact fees?
Churches aren't,
So we're,
apparently in elementary schools.
Unless they're in the county and not, if they're in the UGA, they would have to pay. If
Right.
they're in the city limits, if you generate trips, you pay a fee.
so how, where on this list would they be? I mean, just, they're not on here, but just,
They'd be
It's
probably a
commercial.
commercial building.
Oh,
It's
commercial,
where they
okay.
could be on one of the commercial uses.
okay, oh, I see, okay. All right, answered my question.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment real quick. First of all, I'm for changing the name to transportation. And I'm also secondly, like, I think we should be about average, or we aspire to be Poulsbo or Port Orchard, like other communities that are on the South Puget Sound or Puget Sound. We should probably get our rates up to where they are, around 20% more. That's my first initial feedback.
Yeah, and so that rate in the next year, year and a half will be recalculated, and it is what the cost of these improvements are. Remember, inflation hit hard, right? We've gone up since 2018, 25%. 8%, I can pick a number, but it is up there, right? And so the fee we're charging right now, is lower than it probably should be. And so, anyways, and then you look at all the projects on the list, the ones that got done. Now, remember, we've used grant funding that helped, like Western Gateway was one of them up there. And we got some grant funding for that, which as we complete projects, and if we can get people to assist us with the projects, i.e. state funds, theoretically, over time, your traffic impact fee should stay pretty stable. You know, that you can use traffic impact fees, some TBD dollars and some state dollars, and sort of run the projects off of different funding pots.
So we're not talking tonight for looking for any direction for raising any fees. No.
There is no fee other than in your council packet, master fee schedule, there's an inflation adjustment that's already adopted by ordinance. The CPI for that, and so that's the only thing, the fee went up a little bit for inflation, but we're not changing the fee or re-adopting the fee. Okay,
Not the method is calculated.
not the methodology, just the amount went up by inflation. So past projects, Laurel Street, 13th and Laurel, that was way before my time here. There was a bunch of projects that were constructed about the same time, that included Laurel again and Lake Boulevard. Some of those were all together in the same time, epic. The next big one was Downtown Connector, construction and design, use traffic impact fees. Those were capacity creating projects. You know, they added quite a bit of thoroughfare. And then Western Gateway, we use traffic impact fees on that to offset some of our matches to the state. And so we currently have about 700,000 in the traffic in transportation impact fee fund. I got it.
And they have to be spent in 10 years of collection, correct?
Yes, sir. And right now, the last end, we're about 2030 on spending that. So latest one, and so we're still okay on the 10-year.
Otherwise, we have to refund the fee back to the applicant or the developer, so.
That's
And
bad, so-
Dollar has less purchasing power to move forward,
Right.
so you don't want to sit on it.
Right.
So, next slide. So, some transportation impact fee municipal code changes that I'd like to bring you folks. Go to transportation impact fees rather than the word traffic. That matches our CW. Our current municipal code calls them traffic impact fees. It's bad. It should be transportation impact fees.
Sure.
Um,
Do we want to go through these just one at a time for consensus for these suggestions?
You'll have an opportunity to vote on those at a later date.
Well, that's the suggested code changes, so
Absolutely.
it's coming back,
Yeah,
it's coming back with,
yeah.
so,
Yeah, that'd be.
so, should we, okay, so
Make sure
changing the
we're all on
name,
same
are,
page,
we have consensus to change the name to the transportation impact
At
fees?
least to bring it to council.
Bring it
Yes.
down so here.
Correct,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Perfect.
yeah,
Problem.
okay. We'll make sure that
Yeah,
we're clear, okay, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, and then the next one was, that the project list gets a little old quickly. If I have to adopt it by ordinance, keep bringing it back, keep bringing it back. I'm working with the city attorney to see if we can, in the yearly tip, the transportation impact, transportation improvement program through the state. I gotta handle the projects every year in there. Those are all capacity projects, because they're on state roadways that are, and they're identified as capacity projects. I'm gonna work with the city attorney to see if when that's adopted, if that list would be similar to adopting, because I don't want to have to do the tip and the transportation impact fee ordinance. They're two very similar maps, if you know what I mean. So I'm gonna speak to them a little more about trying to make that a little more clear cut for you guys, okay? So anyways, more to come on that from the city attorney, okay? And then credits. So if a developer constructs an eligible capacity project, that's adopted within the, that's in the adopted plan, then we can negotiate credits back to them, so they don't pay full transportation impact fees. I spoke to our city attorney about that, and it's likely we're gonna have all those go to council through a development agreement. That way, you got them, staff doesn't have the credit methodology and a manual that we would use, most bigger cities do that. We're not gonna have a ton of these. I think it's important for you guys to see when we're giving credits to a project, because they're constructing a capacity project. That is front and center, it's on the list, everyone knows about it, we know they're gonna be building it, and they're gonna be getting some credits to that.
It's a level of transparency.
So,
Very transparent.
okay, so Olympic Heights, the first phase is 200 homes, 109 homes. So that developer is gonna put the intersection improvements or the road all the way down to the intersection there. So then he pays those impact fees, or he gets a credit for those impact fees, and then the other 500 homes come in with a different developer. What's going on there? Is he again is paying those same impact fees for or it doesn't have to be used for that purpose?
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay, so,
Capacity improvement, so.
okay. Because the first guy for the 200 homes is probably gonna do most of the improvements for that intersection.
Well,
Or,
potentially, if they're gonna make any improvements to the intersection, they're gonna do it to full build out.
Yeah.
Because they're not gonna come in and say signalize it and then have to do a roundabout 2 years later when they build out more house. So they're gonna build that and they build it to the future capacity, so they could get credit to that, point, right? To
Okay.
any other future capacity, not just their development, but any future capacity for any other development in the surrounding area.
Okay.
That's where the credits.
because I was assuming that it's not gonna be the same developer back there. Because I don't think they sold all the parcels yet, unless they've recently sold them.
I don't know who the home builder is, but it very well could be the same home builder. That's quite often how it is. The developer, the land developer is different than the home builder. And so they'll sell off the lots themselves for the home developer.
So regardless of the first improvements, the next group is gonna be paying the same fees per home. Okay,
Do
Got it.
park districts have the opportunity to have a transportation impact fee or
Yeah.
just cities and municipalities?
Not transportation, it'd be a park impact.
Be a park impact fee.
And it's calculated the same way on increased capacity, so if you have whatever it is, an apartment, a single family residence, typically it's not commercial development because commercial development doesn't have, impact to parks. But if your single family household is 2.96 or whatever the census is, you take a CIP, your capital improvement program, and say this over the lifespan or whatever the build out of the city and the population growth will determine, what parks are needed, what the cost is to build those parks. That'll determine how much each residential unit essentially pays for an impact.
My question was because we can use this for parks, but none of the items on the list were parks.
Oh, we can't use this for
Oh,
parks,
okay.
no, sorry.
Yeah, that would be
To clarify, you could adopt a separate park impact fee. Or a
Separate
separate
park impact.
fire protection fee, yeah, but the transportation impact fee is solely for transportation projects, yeah, sorry. We're just giving you examples of what other fees could be applied. You might be more familiar with our general facility charges, which are really close to the same as an impact fee for sewer and water services, storm services, those are in place as well.
So on the list here, the type of improvements that are eligible credits towards traffic impact fees, typically those are signals, roundabouts, paving, curbs, sidewalks for people to walk on. Some things that some people don't consider, it's all by agencies. Sometimes they don't consider drainage facilities, sometimes they don't put in street lighting, right? And I like fully improved roadways, right? And if we're requiring those type of things in our standards, they probably should be eligible. So our city attorney and I are looking at that. Land cost is eligible. So if you have to buy right away, RCW specifically states that we have to pay people for property valuation. I think they have to dedicate a purchase right away. is one of the nuances in Washington. So I'm working with the city attorney on the list of things, there's likely most things are gonna be on there, you know, and we're not gonna probably net much from that.
So you suggested that in lieu of more credits would come to us in the form of development agreement each time.
Just for that.
Yeah.
Credit agreement would come to council for ratification. Now, if that turns into a lot of busy work where you're seeing a lot of these, then we'll probably adopt additional credit methodology within the municipal code. That at least sets the easier ones for staff to process, right? But we want to be transparent with these fees and make sure everybody's involved. The calculations and the methodology, the time frame. A lot of cities, if you don't use those credits within 5 years. Because you just don't know your house is built, because you pay at the time of the building permit. And the last one here is you can defer to occupancy for residential only, yeah. So anyways, but if you don't get all your houses built, usually it's a 5-year period that credit will go away, okay? So things like that will be in that credit agreement for council to, look at and adjust if needed.
Something to consider with that, I was watching a video of a developer who developed in Colorado in an area, built these big, beautiful homes, amazing, nobody can afford them. The deferral wouldn't work for that because they've been sitting empty for 2 years, brand new homes, right?
I don't know if there's a sunset on that or not. I don't think so.
They
They could still get the C of O. So the C of O, it doesn't mean that they've sold it, but the builder's been issued the C of O. That's when the TIF is due in Washington State.
In Washington
Not
State.
necessarily when somebody occupies it or is sold, it's when the certificate of occupancy is issued.
Okay, the certificate, okay.
Yeah. Councilmember Schmidt, go back to your last question. Are you thinking about the political ramifications with?
Well, we've never executed a DA as a council.
No, and I'm not aware of one in my tenure.
We're sitting on like some residential construction booms,
Yeah.
over the next 10, 15
Right.
years, right? Stuff's gonna happen, whatever, regardless of what we do. And I just see kind of your point with a larger development that may have multiple builders at some point. And then having to do the equitable thing across each, and then having to, like I said, negotiate a DA across, essentially 5, 6, 7, and I don't, I'm just wondering how
Yeah.
efficient that's gonna be.
Now, for traffic impact fees, I can get you credit methodology if you want it in the municipal code. I've done it at various agencies. We thought it'd be more transparent to bring those to you, but I can bring you the actual, 5-year term, and they can't transfer from one development to the other development. There's just a whole list of items there. I can put them in the code and staff can process the easier ones. The ones that are a little more difficult, we would leave in as another clause that anything that doesn't meet this list can maybe go in, as a development agreement if you choose. But we're tailor making this to fit this body, right?
And I feel more comfortable with something along those lines, just because I think when you look at transparency from the other side. As a builder, it's a lot more transparent of a process to say this is how it's ordered and not, we're negotiating and it might be different for builder A than it is for builder B. So I think if there's a set of standards and there's room within that to make common sense solutions, where do you find that middle ground? I guess is kind of what I'm looking at. I think you're right. There's certain things staff should be able to go down checklists if there's some fairly basic things, but if there's a more involved process that you think needs to come to council, absolutely. What we don't want to do is have a burdensome process for staff or for development community.
We certainly want certainty for our development, right? As much as we can, try to develop.
Right.
This tends to be kind of. What's the term though? It's a little wishy-washy, I guess. It's a
Absolutely.
negotiation process, and what's the developer willing to take on themselves?
And sometimes it can benefit the city so much more not having the stringent guidelines where, hey, we really need this done, we can negotiate a better deal. I don't know, I like the negotiation aspect of it, because then we get to pick a little bit more of what's going on, as opposed to now it's just gonna be a rigid thing that staff's gonna choose, and we're just gonna get told what it is, so.
Well, that choosing though would be set by you in the foreground right now.
Understood, but
coming
these
soon.
projects are specific, our needs are different, so what if we, what if we're not thinking far enough ahead with making these standards? As opposed to like, we've got that development coming in, if someone develops this all out, it expands the capacity, and then if the next person doesn't have the opportunity to expand that capacity, then they're just paying a fee. But then possibly they could shift it over to expand it to a different direction. I don't know, I like the negotiation
We
aspect.
all realize it's not gonna be a broad range of projects, right? If we're talking about Olympic Heights, it's not gonna be improvements on Olympic Highway North that are being considered and negotiated, right? So it's not this menu of the entire tip.
They're adjacent to.
They're adjacent to,
Very,
the
very
so
nearby.
it's gonna be a little more narrow, I think, than maybe we portrayed. Through a negotiation, if you will.
And do they have to be per any rules other than that's just what we're saying, or?
Oh, no, there's a host of rules.
Okay,
It has to
I
be
don't- I don't-
transportation
I'm not-
cost plans, capacity improvement.
Okay.
You're gonna need to submit a preliminary engineer's estimate and a preliminary letter requesting, so staff can process it.
I was specifically talking about the location
There's
of,
coordination.
so
Yeah,
it has to affect their building site, or they can say, I wanna build your multimodal trail down here for some TIF fees. As opposed to building my road out because the road's built
Well,
out.
that's kind of what I was starting to think about.
That's what I'm asking, and if
Right.
there's a rule against that, cause to me, I could come in and say, I wanna build 1,000 homes. But the roads are already in, or I already have to put them in, but if I can waive all these fees, then I can build 2 new parks for you. Or are there rules against that?
No, if it's in the comprehensive plan, the transportation plan, you can pick a project very unusual, for someone to pick a project over there. But if they felt it added value to their development, like the pedestrian trail thing that just came up, this multimodal thing just came up. I can maybe see someone saying, I need to extend the trail from here to there. I've already built this part of my development. But this offsite trail usually is connecting again.
Yeah.
So usually there's a common theme that they connect, right? In one of our.
I think it's gonna be rare that the development we see in the next 20 years is not gonna have capacity improvements required, right, with our current infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just looking at the condition on the ground today, but
But there's also, just like Eric said, though, if you're that back developer that developed those last 200 homes. And everything's already done up to it for you, I don't know,
Mhm.
that's just my place from it, I see it, it leaves it open for a lot more.
I mean, we're negotiating now already. I mean, we were negotiating with somebody to maybe put in their own water tank just to get some houses built, right? And now we might not need that, but. So, I mean, we're already negotiating. I mean, staff is already negotiating.
And just whereas like a developer can come in, I mean, they can do things so much cheaper than what a city can do for often.
Absolutely.
If we're
I-
building out a trail over there,
I've got
you guys
actually
have to do it at a
road.
prevailing wage, it's double what a normal person can build it.
But if
for.
I have equipment and I have a guy who's ready to go,
Yeah.
then.
My buddy was
They
the
still need to
asphalt
build
company.
to our standards. that we have to
Absolutely,
respect.
absolutely.
Yeah.
so it sounds like we kind of gone
Figure
two
it out.
directions. You
Yeah.
wanna see what that looks like, I guess, is that?
I put it in there as it's section with different elements in it and get you guys, this is very typical, most cities have it in there.
So we're gonna give you guidelines for this negotiation power, is what we're gonna do,
I know that
correct?
we're.
In advance.
Correct, we're gonna adopt that in the TIF ordinance. Coming up, we will set guidelines in there for staff to process the majority of them.
And we're gonna set the guidelines, so
You're gonna.
sounds like
yes.
And
it's,
if there's a threshold
Yeah.
that makes more sense to come back to council, we'll determine that threshold as a possibility, and you can review that within the code amendment.
yeah, well, that sounds, I mean, as long as we're setting the guidelines for that negotiating power, then. Yeah, that sounds fine.
Let's get some language in front of you, right,
Let's
so
see
you
what
can
else
see
is
it, obviously, this is conceptual, but
Yeah.
if you can get some language in front of you, you can see what it looks like. Digest it a little bit, makes sense, we can adjust it from there, obviously, but.
Some cities have adopted a whole manual on this subject.
I see why- I
There,
see why.
right? Okay, I don't think we're at the side where we need that type of thing.
The DA requires 3-touch, and it's a hearing. Yeah, I wanna learn more about that.
So
Is,
then,
is that okay before we move along?
Yes.
Okay, we'll bring examples.
Yeah, not
Okay,
rules.
so draft language.
do you guys
I like-
want a
I like
study session on just this methodology? I mean, I could do that rather than bringing the whole ordinance to you.
I'm thinking of the phone calls that we get when things come up similar to this.
Yeah.
And, how that would go.
So study session,
Be good to run through a couple of examples.
I see like 4 or 5 nods so far. 6,
Yeah.
7, okay,
A couple
oh,
of.
sorry,
them,
7,
examples.
here's 7.
Yeah,
Some-
exactly
some
right.
of Recent
Lost
project
count.
that.
Yeah, because we have things coming up, whether they're in the new TIF ordinance for credit methodology. And the staff takes care of that on that end with the methodology we've all defined. Or if it comes to you as a DA, you're gonna be hearing about it either way. Later with the DA or right away with the TIF ordinance. So, but there's good thing, about the DA could be a repetitive thing, right, the development agreement. And so identifying those standards, keeps an action from happening here. As the number of developments increase.
I just think it's, those, well, the phone call complaints a lot of times are related to time.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then 3-touch on a development agreement's an extra month. So, what do you want? I don't know, I don't know what the advantage is or disadvantage at that point, if you're gonna go to try to negotiate out. The per 1,000 square foot fee, or whatever the issue, whatever the bill is gonna be.
There's also small complexity with that, as the DA would come to you with preliminary costs and that sort of thing. The actual traffic impact fee credit or transportation impact fee credit. Is based on actual construction costs at the end, right? It could be more, it could be less. That's how the credits are typically issued, is on actual cost at the end. So you take a DA and then it takes a year or more to construct it. Then you have actual final costs. The DA will speak to that, but it's a little more complex. So a couple last bullet points here. Is, so the deferral system, we want to make sure that we meet state standards on that. That occupancy for residential, all that, we're doing some checking to make sure that's. The transportation impact fee section hasn't been touched in a long time, so we're doing some checking in there. And then the last one is infill lots. So in the traffic and transport, it's called traffic impact fee right now, but the transportation impact fee section. That we're going to remove the definition of infill lots. The infill lots was those little small 150 foot or less improvements in the design centers. Remember that matrix we went through? Infill lots and the transportation impact fees that currently is written is anything that was platted prior to 1938. I think is the year. Okay, so there's 2 conflicting parts or standards that we want to take care of that. And so currently infill lots do not pay a traffic impact fee in the current code. And I don't know if with the current RCW, if that's even valid. They're generating trips. They say if you generate trips, you gotta pay the fee, right? So I'm checking with our city attorney on that part also.
Yeah, because if you have 4 infill lots, there's a lot of traffic there. Or even 3,
Just one adds traffic.
yeah. Hmm.
There's no,
Okay, so that's all I had tonight. Yes.
I'll circle back. I need to finish formulating the thought. No,
Not yet, okay.
Anybody else want to jump in?
This is really, I think these study sessions are priceless, because all these questions in the back of our head and we don't think of them you know, we just go about our business, but having them on paper and studying them is great.
So, just, I'm gonna sell here a little bit, the three touch rules, a lot of agencies, they do a lot of study sessions, back off on that. A lot of things go on the consent calendar. Since
Like that.
we're sitting here talking about things, everyone understands, they put it on consent, you pull it from consent if you don't like something, if you wanna ask
Right.
questions, but it does expedite your meetings. Study sessions, what it's all about, this is where you understand the materials, then it's presented to you. Some of these go on consent, if anybody, even in the audience, can pull from the consent calendar, it's normally heard at the end of the business agenda or the action agenda, depending on what it's at, so I still get a full presentation. So all the materials there, but it does shorten the meetings.
Yeah, the county does that as well, but we should probably wait for the new council before we make those decisions. It's, you know, we've got.
It's part of the protocol manual, if we open protocol
Yeah.
manual, it's nice to open it
Yeah.
thoroughly and review any changes that are made at the same time, but, you know, I think that at least portion, if not all of this council made the conscious decision to uphold the three touch rule.
Yeah.
For transparency purposes, I think we've instituted a kind of a different format for study sessions since then too. So if there's a comfort level on how much information you're receiving here, the direction that staff are getting as well, and even if we need multiple study sessions to further vet in order to get it to either a business or consent agenda or action agenda item later. Yeah, certainly open to discuss that, whatever meets the council's goals at the same time, being transparent for our community.
I know from project awards, we have a problem that we have to issue the contract within 45 days. And the current process, we're right up against the window.
Well, we waive three touch when we need to.
We can't, yeah.
You can, right,
So.
but I just don't wanna get caught up.
Waiting three touch on a DA.
Yeah.
That's not gonna apply.
Yeah.
That's not gonna apply.
Well, he's talking about contract awards.
Yeah, but, yeah, I mean. Okay.
But we want council direction in that
Yeah.
case. We don't want staff to be driving that, right? That's, this has been a conscious decision to institute, and maintain the three touch rule. And so staff wants to maintain that at the council's discretion unless the council decides to change that. So, but yeah, we can bring that up for future consideration. We open up the protocol manual again.
I think waiving when we need to waive is fine,
It's always an option for us.
right?
I like stopping when we need to stop, but
Providing some guidance, well, and maybe some criteria on what would it, you know, what would be suitable for three touch rule. Help staff out.
I'd rather weigh in on the side that's less or more transparent and less likely to be controversial. So I would agree with Councilmember Sherman.
Cause there's been situations where we're like, okay, all the information there has been given to us and we need to move, and we do.
And when
We
we
do.
get into the touch rule, we three touch rule it.
But I think Mark's saying that what criteria we want to allow a waiver with three touch. So grant awards, absolutely. We don't want to lose a grant because it's gonna take a month and a half to do it the three touch way. So we definitely want to waive the three touch, but do we want to waive a three touch for everything that happens? No,
No.
we don't. The criteria I would say would
Absolutely
grant awards is
necessary.
definitely one of
Yeah.
them. I don't know what else can come up.
Open that.
You know. You know, we kind of waive a three touch for the arts pictures, which is,
well, I'd rather waive them all, and then if we feel that we need to go deeper on something, we'll go deeper on it, but that's just the,
It's a future topic we can certainly discuss in a study session. Right?
yeah.
Councilor Peterson,
transparency.
did you have something?
I was just thinking about the info lot definition and how that fits in with our 5-year. For, you know, typically after 5 years no longer applies, starting that formula over, how that fits in. Just trying to kind of right size that process wise, but I think the bigger picture was, you know, how do we align our definitions across the code? And that's absolutely what we want to see, so.
I guess I'll just leave it with this, with the DA. I would hate to have 4-3 votes on DAs. Yeah. And I see that happen. Because one side's gonna say, no, I'm not gonna subsidize this developer. You know, and the other side's gonna say, yeah, we need rooftops, right? And I think the importance of the transportation improvement plan also needs to get looked at too. Because, you know, you guys provide us with a plan, right? You know, you feed us that, we ratify it. There's usually really no challenge on that each year. But we're structuring fees around that plan, and we can only execute that plan with these fees. So I think we need to have probably a little bit more robust process for going through the TIP every year. Keeping this in mind when we go through that, like bringing this back to us and saying, when we add this project to the list, overall, it's gonna, you know, increase total project list about this many $1 million or whatever, and TIP should be commensurate with that or not, whatever we decide, but I think that will also, I don't know.
With the potential funding sources attached to these projects, correct?
Yeah,
And if
yeah.
if TIF is attached to that, or if it's the transportation
Identifying, yeah.
benefit district, and that's sunsetting in 2026. That has to be accounted for, correct?
Yeah, I mean, right. And so it's in a way, it's like actually TIP should almost be projected out
Do we,
6 years.
I'm a little concerned about this, the UGA issues, because should we have maybe a joint meeting with the counties and sit down and talk about this? Because I could see people wanting to annex into the city, building their stuff in the UGA while it's still under county control, and then asking us to annex them, and then we've got a dirt road we have to pave.
Or not,
Well,
nothing says we have to improve it.
I don't think we should have dirt roads in the city, but
I don't either.
but I don't think we should be backdoored into doing one. I mean, we got enough out there right now that we need to put care of.
I think we have the appropriate process set up with the comprehensive plans being updated at the same time. We're gonna look through the countywide planning policies, the urban growth area, development standards. I think there's interest, at least talking with county staff, to maybe refine those standards so they more appropriately align with city standards at the same time, knowing that it's in the UGA and that in all likelihood it's going to be annexed in the city at some point. So I think we'll have an appropriate process coming up. It's, you know, it's not quick, obviously. It's gonna take some time.
Good.
Cool.
Okey-dokey.
So
Now I'm wide awake.
any other questions? Any items for discussion? New items?
Nope.
No. All right, this meeting is, or this study session is adjourned.